The late afternoon sunlight spilled over the small neighborhood garage, painting the parked cars with a warm golden glow. Dust particles floated lazily through the beams of light, dancing in the air like tiny, drifting sparks. The world seemed slower here, quieter, almost as if it had paused to breathe. Inside the garage, the mechanic worked in familiar, patient rhythm. His hands, strong and calloused, moved with the ease of years spent understanding machines. He tightened a bolt on a car's undercarriage, wiped his hands on a faded rag, and listened to the soft ticking of an engine cooling in the summer heat. Each sound blended into a gentle hum, a slow heartbeat for the otherwise quiet day. He was finishing a routine check on a late-model sedan when something at the edge of his vision caught his attention. A dog. Brown, slightly scruffy, with fur catching the sunlight in soft highlights. The dog was sitting near a parked car at the far end of the lot. At first glance, he seemed like just another stray. There were plenty of them wandering the neighborhood. But there was something different in the way he held himself. The dog was perfectly still. Tail wrapped neatly around his paws, ears perked slightly, and eyes fixed on one particular vehicle. It wasn't laziness. It wasn't boredom. It was focus. Purpose. The mechanic paused mid-wipe. His breath slowed. There was a calm in the dog's gaze, but beneath it, a quiet intensity, a subtle insistence that drew him closer. People passed by the lot. Children rode bicycles along the street. A delivery truck rumbled past the garage entrance. The dog ignored all of it. He didn't bark. He didn't fidget. He simply sat, eyes locked on the same car, breathing slow and deliberate. The mechanic leaned against his workbench. Interesting, he murmured to himself. There was nothing threatening here, nothing alarming, but something in the dog's behavior pulled at him. Curiosity. Wonder. A strange, unspoken connection forming across the distance. The dog shifted slightly. His head tilted in that familiar canine way, ears angled to catch a sound beyond human perception. Then, with gentle precision, he walked forward, placing his front paws lightly against the car door. He pressed his nose to the metal, inhaling slowly, deliberately. The mechanic crouched down, keeping his voice soft. "Hey, what are you looking at, buddy?" The dog turned his eyes toward him, briefly intelligent, calm, almost assessing, and then returned them to the door seam. He nudged the car once with his nose. A single, purposeful touch. Not playful. Not demanding. Reverent. A young woman walking by paused. "Does he belong to anyone?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Not that I know of," the mechanic replied. The dog lifted his head slightly and exhaled, a quiet sigh that seemed almost human. And for a moment, the garage felt smaller, more intimate, the world narrowing to the warm sunlight, the hum of machines, and the silent connection between man and dog. Minutes passed. The dog didn't move. His focus never wavered. The mechanic felt an odd tightening in his chest, a mixture of intrigue, admiration, and a faint sense of awe. There was a story here. A meaning behind this calm insistence. The sunlight shifted, striking the dog's fur in a halo of amber warmth. Dust motes drifted through the rays, sparkling as they floated down. Time seemed suspended. Finally, the dog pressed his nose against the car one last time. Then he sat, tail curling around his paws, eyes steady and unwavering. The mechanic exhaled slowly, letting the quiet moments settle over him. He didn't know what the dog was waiting for, or why he had chosen this exact car. But he felt it in his chest, a quiet, undeniable purpose. The dog was not lost. He was waiting. Watching. Protecting. Guarding. And what the dog sensed would change everything. The next afternoon arrived wearing the same golden warmth as before. The sunlight settled softly across the parking lot, touching the metal surfaces of parked cars like a quiet blessing. The summer air carried the faint scent of engine oil, dust, and sun-warmed concrete. The mechanic found himself glancing toward the entrance of the garage more often than he usually did. He did not admit it aloud, but he was waiting. Waiting for the dog. And somewhere deep inside his chest, he felt the strange certainty that the dog was waiting too. The brown stray appeared at almost the same time as the previous day. Slow steps. Careful movement. As if he was following an invisible clock hidden inside his memory. The dog crossed the parking lot gravel quietly, paws pressing softly against the small stones beneath him. Each step made a delicate crunching sound, like distant footsteps echoing inside a sleeping world. No barking. No excitement. No urgency visible in his body. Only calm intention. He reached the same car. The same position. The same quiet stillness. The mechanic smiled slightly without realizing it. Back again, he whispered. The dog's tail moved once. Slow. Measured. Almost like a greeting that did not want to disturb the peace around them. The dog walked closer to the vehicle door and repeated yesterday's action. Nose near the metal seam. Breathing slowly. Listening. The mechanic stood near the workshop doorway, watching quietly. The workshop fan spun lazily above, pushing warm air in slow circles. The sound mixed with the distant laughter of someone passing on the street outside. The world felt calm. Ordinary. Yet something inside the scene carried meaning. The dog's ears twitched slightly whenever a faint mechanical sound came from beneath the car chassis. The metal structure made tiny cooling clicks as the afternoon heat changed its tension. It was not panic behavior. Not nervous searching. It was focus. The kind of focus seen in animals who listen to the world through senses humans cannot fully understand. The mechanic slowly walked closer. His footsteps were quiet on the concrete floor. He crouched beside the dog again. "Do you hear something?" he asked softly. The dog tilted his head. Not answering. Not ignoring. Just acknowledging the question in the way animals sometimes do. The mechanic placed his palm gently on the car's warm metal surface. The sunlight had been resting there for hours. The surface felt almost alive under his touch, holding heat like a slow, patient memory of the day. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to listen the way the dog seemed to listen. The distant sound of a passing truck echoed faintly from the road outside. Leaves moved softly in a nearby tree. The workshop fan hummed above them. The dog's breathing remained slow and steady beside him. Nothing unusual could be heard. Yet the dog did not move away. He stayed focused, as if guarding something hidden inside the shadow beneath the machine. A customer walked toward the office door but paused when she saw the unusual scene. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently. The mechanic nodded. "Just checking something." The dog suddenly stood. Not excitedly. Not aggressively. Simply, purposefully. He walked to the front tire area and sat again, staring beneath the vehicle body. The mechanic felt something shift inside his chest. Understanding was beginning to grow like quiet light spreading across a dark room. The dog was not asking for food. Not searching for comfort. He was trying to show something. The mechanic knelt down and pulled a small flashlight from his pocket. The beam of light slid slowly under the car chassis. Dust. Metal frame. Mechanical joints. Nothing unusual at first. Then something small appeared near the rear chassis panel. A movement. Tiny. Almost invisible. The mechanic held his breath. The dog's tail stopped moving. The entire parking lot felt suddenly heavier, quieter, as if the world itself was waiting. The mechanic adjusted the flashlight angle slowly. And then he saw it again. A faint scratching movement coming from a small opening near the protective underbody cover. Something alive. Something trapped. The mechanic's heartbeat slowed. Time felt stretched, suspended inside the golden afternoon. He lowered himself further, peering carefully beneath the vehicle. Two tiny eyes blinked weakly inside the shadowed gap. Small. Afraid. Alive. The mechanic's breath stopped for a moment. It was a kitten. Hiding inside the narrow chassis space. The realization spread slowly through his chest like warm, surprising sunlight. The dog beside him remained perfectly still. Watching. Waiting. Protecting the discovery. The mechanic whispered softly, almost reverently, "Did you know?" The dog did not bark. Did not move. But his tail began to wag slowly, very slowly, like the release of a long-held breath. Relief. Understanding. The mechanic knew in that moment that the dog had been listening to the faint cries of the kitten trapped inside the vehicle structure. Day after day. Waiting. Guarding. Calling silently for help in the only way he knew. Through patience. Through presence. Through unwavering attention. The mechanic felt a strange warmth rising inside his chest. The dog was not guarding a car. He was guarding life. And somewhere beneath the metal shadow, a small heart was still beating. The following morning, the garage bathed in the same warm, golden sunlight that seemed to arrive like a quiet visitor every day. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, catching the light as if tiny stars had decided to rest in the workshop. The mechanic arrived early, keys jingling softly in his pocket. He paused at the entrance, instinctively scanning the parking lot. And there it was. The brown dog, sitting patiently near the same car, tail wrapped neatly around his paws. The mechanic's chest tightened slightly, a mix of curiosity and admiration building slowly inside him. There was a rhythm to the dog's visits, a silent schedule that he alone followed. It made no sound, caused no disruption, but carried a gravity that the mechanic could feel in the quiet of his own heartbeat. He set down his tools and crouched slightly, careful not to startle the dog. "Morning, buddy," he murmured. The dog looked up briefly, ears tilting, and then returned his gaze to the car. Calm. Focused. Purposeful. Something about the dog's stillness compelled the mechanic to watch longer than usual. He could feel the pull of a story unfolding, one he couldn't quite see yet, but was certain existed. He remembered the small scratching movement beneath the car from the previous day. Tiny, almost imperceptible, but alive. He remembered the kitten. And he realized something slowly, with a warmth spreading through his chest. The dog had not wandered here by accident. The dog had heard. He had listened. He had waited. The mechanic set a small bowl of water near the edge of the lot. He did not expect the dog to drink immediately, but he wanted to show kindness, acknowledgement, a quiet connection forming between human and animal. The dog approached cautiously, sniffed the bowl, and drank with the slow, deliberate patience of one who had learned trust before. The mechanic felt his heart relax in the soft rhythm of the dog's movements. There was understanding here, silent, unspoken, but profound. After finishing, the dog returned to the car, nose pressed against the seam once again. The mechanic crouched beside him, careful not to speak too loudly. He watched the dog's ears twitch as faint sounds from beneath the car reached his acute hearing. He felt a surge of admiration and wonder. This wasn't a dog seeking food or shelter. This was a dog listening for life, listening for the faintest hint of distress, guarding something far smaller, more vulnerable than anyone had noticed. A regular customer walked in through the garage door, pausing when she saw the mechanic and the dog huddled near the car. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. The mechanic shook his head slightly. "Yes, just observing," he said. The dog stood suddenly, moving to the front tire area and sitting again, focused beneath the chassis. His posture was deliberate, commanding attention without demanding it. The mechanic felt a strange thrill of discovery. He was no longer simply watching a dog, he was witnessing intuition in its purest, gentlest form. There was no fear, no danger. Only purpose. Only patience. Only connection. He knelt down, flashlight in hand, angling the beam carefully beneath the car. Dust, metal, and shadow danced under the light. And there it was again, a tiny, weak movement, eyes blinking, struggling quietly inside the narrow cavity beneath the chassis. A small kitten. The mechanic's breath caught in his chest. He exhaled slowly, trying not to disturb the delicate balance of life, the silent bond forming between dog, human, and small creature. The dog remained still beside him. Watching. Waiting. Protecting. The mechanic felt awe settle over him like warm sunlight, understanding finally dawning in the quiet rhythm of the scene. Day after day, the dog returned. And each day, the mechanic observed more closely. He began bringing small pieces of leftover chicken or bread, placing them quietly near the water bowl. The dog accepted them slowly, eating not out of hunger, but trust. Trust in the human who now shared his silent vigil. The bond deepened with each passing moment. The dog was patient. The mechanic was patient. And together, they formed a quiet partnership, one that needed no words to define it. The sunlight shifted over the parking lot, brushing the car and the dog in a warm, golden glow. Dust motes danced in the light like floating stars. The mechanic's heart swelled with quiet emotion. This was no longer just a stray dog. This was a companion. A guide. A silent guardian. And the story beneath the car, the tiny life waiting in shadow, remained the heart of the mystery. The mechanic knew one thing for certain now: he was no longer just an observer. He was a participant. The dog had chosen him, just as surely as he had chosen the car, and perhaps, in some unspoken way, they were choosing each other. And in that quiet afternoon light, as the wind whispered softly through the leaves lining the street, the mechanic understood that this simple, patient act of watching, listening, waiting, was about to change all their lives forever. The days that followed felt softer somehow. Not louder, not faster, but quieter, as if time itself had decided to slow down near the garage parking lot. The summer sunlight returned every afternoon in the same gentle golden color, touching the metal surfaces of parked cars and turning dust floating in the air into tiny glowing sparks. And every day, at almost the same hour, the dog came back. The mechanic began recognizing the rhythm of his arrival. Slow footsteps across gravel. Careful breathing. That quiet dignity in his posture that made him look less like a wandering stray and more like someone carrying a silent responsibility. The dog would always walk to the same car. Always sit near the same door. Always press his nose gently against the seam beneath the vehicle body as if listening to a heartbeat hidden inside steel and shadow. The mechanic started bringing small offerings. Not dramatically. Not ceremonially. Just quietly. A few pieces of leftover chicken from his lunch. Sometimes a small bowl of clean water placed near the edge of the parking area. He never tried to force the dog to approach. He simply waited. And patience became their language. The first time the dog ate the food, he did it slowly. He sniffed the chicken pieces carefully. Then picked one up gently with his mouth and chewed with deliberate calmness. Not like a hungry animal desperate for survival, but like someone who understood kindness when it was offered. The mechanic felt warmth spread slowly inside his chest. Trust was growing between them. Not spoken. Not demanded. But built through presence. Through silence shared under sunlight. After eating, the dog would walk back to the car and resume his position beside the chassis area. Sometimes he would sit. Sometimes he would lie down with his head resting close to the metal surface. The mechanic noticed something interesting. The dog reacted whenever faint mechanical sounds came from beneath the car. Tiny scratching movements. Soft shifting. The dog's ears would twitch slightly. His eyes would sharpen with intense focus. It was not anxiety. It was awareness. Like a guardian listening for the smallest sign of life struggling to be heard. One afternoon, a customer walked into the office area and whispered, "That dog is strange, isn't he?" The mechanic smiled faintly. "Maybe," he said. But inside his mind, he thought something else. The dog was not strange. The world was just not used to listening the way animals sometimes do. That day, the mechanic brought something different. A small piece of soft cloth he found in the storage drawer. He placed it gently beside the water bowl. The dog approached cautiously, sniffed the cloth, then lay down beside it. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, as if accepting comfort without feeling pressure to respond. The sunlight fell across the dog's brown fur, turning it into warm amber shades that shimmered slightly whenever he breathed. The mechanic crouched nearby. "Do you have a name?" he asked quietly. The dog lifted his head slightly. His eyes were calm, thoughtful, as if considering the question. After a long moment, the mechanic spoke again. "I think I'll call you Brownie." The dog's tail moved once. Slow. Almost ceremonial. Not excitement, but acceptance. Like acknowledging a name given by someone who meant no harm. The mechanic felt an unexpected tightness in his throat. There was something deeply human about the moment. Something fragile and warm and strangely sacred. Customers sometimes paused at the entrance to watch the scene. A man and a stray dog sitting quietly in golden afternoon light beside a parked car. No shouting. No chaos. No fear. Just presence. Just companionship. The mechanic noticed that he no longer felt alone during the slow hours of work. Brownie's quiet vigil beside the car felt like shared responsibility. Like two guardians protecting a secret life hiding beneath metal shadow. The mechanic sometimes spoke softly to the dog. Not expecting answers. Just sharing thoughts. "How long have you been alone?" he asked once. The dog did not reply. But he rested his head slightly closer to the car body. As if the answer was somewhere inside the silence between them. The kitten beneath the car was still alive. The mechanic could occasionally hear faint movement when the chassis was quiet. Small. Weak. But persistent. Life was holding on inside the narrow metal shelter. And Brownie was holding on too. Every day. Waiting. Watching. Protecting. The mechanic realized something slowly and deeply during those afternoons. The dog was not searching for food. Not searching for comfort. He was performing a duty he believed belonged to him. Guarding the smallest voice he could hear. The world outside continued moving, cars arriving, customers leaving, children laughing on bicycles passing the street, but inside the parking lot, a small universe had formed. Human. Dog. And life hiding in shadow. And the mechanic felt, in the quietest corner of his heart, that something beautiful was growing from this strange, patient waiting. Because sometimes love does not speak in loud gestures. Sometimes it lives inside stillness. Inside listening. Inside the simple act of staying. And Brownie stayed. Day after day. Under warm golden sunlight. Listening to a heartbeat the world had forgotten to notice. One morning, the mechanic arrived earlier than usual. The sky above the garage was pale blue, washed clean by the soft light of sunrise. The air felt cooler than the afternoons, carrying the quiet freshness that comes only before the day fully awakens. The parking lot was still. Almost sleeping. He walked slowly toward the workshop door, feeling the familiar weight of curiosity settling inside his chest. And there he was. Brownie. Sitting beside the car. Patient. Waiting. As if the night itself had been part of his vigil. The dog lifted his head when he saw the mechanic approaching. Not excitedly. Not suddenly. Just a small acknowledgement, eyes meeting eyes in quiet understanding. The mechanic exhaled slowly. "Good morning," he whispered. The dog's tail moved once. Slow. Respectful. The mechanic placed a small piece of chicken near the water bowl he had left the previous day. Brownie approached, sniffed the food, and ate slowly. After finishing, he returned immediately to his position beside the car chassis. Today felt different. The mechanic sensed it before even speaking. There was tension inside the silence, not fear, not danger, but anticipation. He crouched beside the vehicle, pulling the small flashlight from his pocket. Brownie watched every movement carefully. The mechanic pressed the button. The white beam of light slipped beneath the car body, cutting through dust and shadow. At first, he saw only metal structure and accumulated dirt from road travel. Then he heard it. A faint scratching sound. Very soft. Almost like the touch of tiny claws against plastic or metal. The mechanic froze. Slowly, carefully, he adjusted the flashlight angle. There it was again. A small movement near the rear chassis joint where the protective panel had loosened slightly. The mechanic's heart slowed. Not in fear, but in reverence. Life was hiding there. Patient. Fragile. Waiting for discovery. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "You were right, weren't you?" Brownie sat perfectly still beside him. His ears were focused. His breathing slow. The mechanic felt a strange emotional pressure inside his chest, like witnessing something sacred without fully understanding why it felt that way. He lay down carefully on the concrete floor, peering deeper under the vehicle. The flashlight beam revealed the tiny eyes again. Blinking weakly inside shadow. A kitten. Small. Thin. Probably scared. Probably alone. But alive. The mechanic exhaled slowly through his nose, trying not to disturb the delicate silence surrounding them. He spoke quietly. "Okay, little one. I'm going to help you now." His voice was soft enough that it barely carried beyond his breath. Brownie stood up suddenly. Not aggressively. Not anxiously. But attentively. Watching. Protecting the process. The mechanic moved slowly toward the workshop storage area and returned with a thin mechanic's inspection tool. He carefully loosened the remaining edge of the protective underbody panel. The metal creaked softly. The kitten inside shifted slightly, frightened by the movement. Brownie took one step closer. Not threatening. Not rushing. Just present. As if sending silent reassurance through presence alone. The mechanic reached inside carefully with gloved hands. His movements were slow, deliberate, respectful of the fragile life hidden beneath steel. Then he felt warmth. Soft fur against his fingers. The kitten resisted slightly at first, frightened by the touch of the world outside its small shadowed home. The mechanic spoke gently. "It's okay, you're safe now." He lifted the kitten slowly into the sunlight. The morning light fell across the small animal's body. The kitten was dusty, frightened, and very small. But alive. Brownie moved closer immediately. He sniffed the kitten carefully. Slowly. Patiently. Like recognizing a long-awaited family member. Then something unexpected happened. The dog's tail began wagging slowly, continuously, as if releasing tension he had carried for days. The mechanic felt warmth rising in his eyes. The bond between dog and human and small life had reached a turning point. He placed the kitten gently inside a soft cloth he had prepared earlier. The kitten trembled slightly but did not struggle. The mechanic felt a strange emotional weight lift from his chest. Because the waiting was over. The mystery was revealed, and the dog's silent duty had been fulfilled. Brownie sat beside him under the morning sunlight, eyes calm, posture relaxed. Peace had returned to the parking lot. The world felt softer, warmer, like a breath released after holding it for too long. The mechanic placed his hand gently on the dog's head. "Thank you," he whispered. Brownie closed his eyes slowly. Content. Because sometimes purpose is not about saving loudly. Sometimes purpose is about listening when the world is too quiet to hear the smallest cry. And that morning, under golden sunlight and quiet wind, the secret beneath the car was finally brought back to life. The garage felt different after that morning. Not louder, not brighter, but lighter. As if a small invisible weight had been lifted from the parking lot air itself. The mechanic placed the kitten inside a small cardboard carrier lined with a soft cloth he had found in the workshop storage. The tiny animal rested there quietly, occasionally shifting its small body as it adjusted to warmth and safety. Brownie sat beside the carrier, watching, guarding. His posture was relaxed now, but his eyes never left the small box. The mechanic noticed something beautiful and deeply human inside the dog's behavior. There was no excitement, no frantic movement, only peaceful observation. Like someone who had completed a long responsibility and was now ensuring the result remained safe. Customers came and went throughout the day. Some smiled quietly when they saw the dog sitting near the mechanic's work area. One child pointed at Brownie and whispered to her mother, "He looks like a guardian." The mechanic heard it, and something inside his chest warmed softly. Because the child was right. Brownie had been a guardian. Not through strength or aggression, but through patience, through listening, through the quiet courage of staying when others might have walked away. The mechanic checked the kitten occasionally. He gave it small drops of water using a clean pipette tool he found in the medical supply drawer. The kitten responded slowly, swallowing weakly but steadily. Life was fragile, but alive. Brownie watched every movement carefully. His ears reacted slightly whenever the kitten shifted inside the carrier. The mechanic realized that the dog was still listening, still responsible. Even though the kitten was now safe. The afternoon sunlight returned, touching the parking lot in warm amber tones. Dust particles floated lazily through the golden beams, like small pieces of floating memory. The mechanic sat on an old metal stool near the garage door. Brownie walked closer and sat beside him. Not touching, but close enough that their shadows almost overlapped on the concrete floor. The mechanic spoke quietly. "I think you saved him." The dog did not respond with sound. But he leaned slightly toward the mechanic's leg, a gesture of trust and quiet acceptance. The mechanic felt his throat tighten unexpectedly. He was a man who worked with machines. Things made of metal. Things predictable in structure. But this moment was different. This was life. Unpredictable. Fragile. Beautiful in its uncertainty. He thought about how the dog had returned every day. Patient. Listening. Waiting for the smallest sign of distress hidden beneath steel shadow. The world outside the garage continued moving normally. Cars passed along the street. People talked. Children laughed. The wind moved softly through nearby trees. But inside the parking lot, time felt slower. Gentler. More meaningful. The mechanic reached down slowly and placed his hand on Brownie's head. The dog closed his eyes, as if accepting gratitude without needing words. "You did something very important," the mechanic whispered. Brownie exhaled softly. That simple breath carried something that felt like emotional release, like finishing a long, unseen mission. The mechanic realized something profound in that moment. The dog had not been searching for recognition. Not searching for reward. not even searching for human approval. He had been responding to a sound only he could hear. The cry of a life trapped inside darkness. The mechanic wondered how long Brownie had been listening before the first day he noticed him. How many hours had the dog spent sitting beside the car? How much patience had lived inside that small brown body? The thought made his chest feel warm and heavy at the same time. Later that evening, the mechanic prepared a small meal for Brownie. He placed fresh water and food near the workshop entrance. Brownie ate slowly, then returned to sit beside the carrier containing the kitten. The mechanic watched silently as the dog rested his head gently near the cardboard box. Not touching it. Just staying close. Guarding. Because sometimes love is not about holding something tightly. Sometimes love is about staying near what matters. The sunlight began fading outside the garage windows. Golden light turned into soft orange twilight. Shadows stretched slowly across the parking lot. The world felt peaceful. The mystery had found its meaning. The truth beneath the car had been revealed. And in the quiet space between man, dog, and small life, something healing had taken root. Because sometimes the greatest kindness is not saving loudly. It is listening quietly when the world is too busy to hear. And Brownie had listened. When no one else did. The morning sun filtered softly through the garage windows, painting the parking lot in warm shades of gold and amber. The air smelled faintly of oil, dust, and sunlight, a comforting combination that made the world feel both ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. The kitten, now resting in its small cloth-lined carrier, stirred gently as if sensing the presence of someone important nearby. Brownie sat beside it, calm, patient, unwavering. His eyes followed the smallest movements, his ears twitching occasionally to pick up faint sounds. He seemed to understand something beyond words, a knowledge that only a dog could hold. The mechanic approached slowly, his footsteps quiet on the concrete floor. He crouched down beside the dog, careful not to disturb the fragile peace of the moment. "You really knew, didn't you?" he whispered softly. Brownie lifted his head slightly, eyes locking with the mechanic's. Not demanding. Not pleading. Only calm, patient understanding. The mechanic's heart tightened. He realized the truth, something he had begun to sense days ago, but only now fully understood. Brownie had been listening for life. Not for danger. Not for play. Not for attention. He had been listening for the softest, smallest cry of someone trapped. The mechanic reflected on how he had arrived that first afternoon, watching a dog sit patiently beside a car, thinking it was simply a stray. But now he knew the depth of that patience, the quiet heroism of those long hours spent waiting. He reached down slowly and lifted the kitten gently. The small creature trembled slightly, but did not struggle. It had already begun to trust the presence of those around it, first Brownie, and now the mechanic. The dog's gaze remained fixed on the kitten. His body relaxed only when he saw the kitten safe. The bond between them, though silent, was palpable. The mechanic spoke softly, more to himself than anyone else. "You saved him. All by yourself. And you've been protecting him all this time." Brownie wagged his tail slightly, a slow, deliberate movement. Not for reward. Not for praise. But a quiet acknowledgement that his purpose had been fulfilled. The mechanic realized that the dog's intuition had been extraordinary. Most animals would not have noticed such a faint sound. Most humans would have passed by, seeing only a car and a stray dog. But Brownie had stayed. Listened. Acted. A neighbor passing by the garage peered over and asked, "Is that the dog that's always here?" The mechanic smiled faintly. "Yes," he said softly. "And he's a hero." The neighbor laughed quietly. "A hero?" "Yes," the mechanic said, voice low. "He saved a life. And he's still guarding it." Brownie shifted slightly, resting his head near the kitten. The mechanic watched them both, feeling an unexpected wave of emotion rise inside him. He realized that sometimes, the greatest acts of love are quiet, uncelebrated, and unseen. For days, the dog had been an invisible guardian, a silent protector of life. He had understood something beyond instinct, something deep, pure, and profoundly human in its emotional resonance. The kitten stretched slightly, yawning, and Brownie watched it with the same careful patience. It was as if he was ensuring the world remained safe for this small life, as if he understood the fragility of trust, the delicacy of survival. The mechanic leaned back against a workbench, eyes soft. "You're extraordinary, Brownie," he whispered. The dog simply blinked slowly, his presence enough to communicate everything words could not. The morning passed gently. Sunlight shifted, touching the lot with warmer golden tones. Dust floated lazily, catching the rays like drifting specks of magic. The mechanic noticed every detail, every small movement of the dog and kitten. And he understood fully that Brownie had been the bridge between vulnerability and safety. The dog's patience had translated into life, his quiet vigilance into survival. In that soft, still afternoon light, the mechanic felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not only for the kitten's life, but for the quiet wisdom of a dog who had known how to listen. Brownie had taught him something invisible yet undeniable, that love is often found not in loud gestures or dramatic heroics, but in patience, presence, and the willingness to notice what others do not. The mechanic reached down again, gently resting his hand on Brownie's head. "Thank you," he whispered. The dog exhaled slowly, leaning slightly against the mechanic's leg. Trust and understanding passed between them, unspoken but deeply felt. And in that quiet moment, the mechanic knew this story would stay with him forever. A story of patience, quiet courage, and the extraordinary intuition of a dog who had saved a life without ever seeking recognition. The golden light faded slowly, leaving the lot bathed in soft afternoon warmth. Brownie remained beside the kitten, eyes calm, breathing steady. The truth had revealed itself, life had been saved, and the quiet heroism of one loyal dog had made it possible. And sometimes, that is all the world needs. The evening arrived quietly, like a soft breath released after a long day of waiting. The sun was setting behind the distant buildings outside the garage, painting the sky in gentle shades of orange, pink, and fading gold. The parking lot slowly lost its brightness as shadows stretched across the concrete ground. But the warmth remained. Not in the light, but in the feeling inside the small workshop space. The kitten rested safely inside a larger soft carrier now prepared by the mechanic. He had made sure the tiny animal would have comfort and warmth for the night. Brownie sat beside it. His posture was calm, peaceful. His duty felt complete. The mechanic cleaned his tools slowly, moving without hurry, allowing the quiet atmosphere of the evening to settle over him like familiar music. No customers were left in the garage. No engines were running. Only the soft whisper of wind moving through the trees beside the street. And the breathing rhythm of man and dog sharing the same space. The mechanic walked slowly toward Brownie and sat down beside him on the concrete floor. The surface was still warm from the sunlight stored inside it during the day. Brownie did not move away. Instead, he shifted slightly closer, resting his shoulder gently against the mechanic's leg. It was not a dramatic gesture. Just simple trust. The mechanic spoke softly. "It's finished now, isn't it?" Brownie blinked slowly. His tail moved once. Slow. Measured. Like acceptance. The mechanic felt a strange emotion rising inside his chest. Gratitude. Peace. And a quiet sadness that often follows the end of something beautiful. He reached down and placed his hand gently on the dog's head. The fur was warm under his palm. "Thank you," he whispered. Brownie closed his eyes slowly. Not out of exhaustion, but contentment. Because sometimes happiness does not show itself in excitement. Sometimes it lives inside stillness. Inside the knowledge that something important was accomplished. The mechanic remembered the first day he saw Brownie sitting beside the car. The stillness. The focus. The purpose hidden inside a stray dog's calm gaze. And now he understood. Brownie had not been lost. He had been searching for something he was meant to find. The kitten inside the car had been calling softly through the fragile walls of metal and shadow. And Brownie had listened. When no one else did. The mechanic stood slowly and walked to the entrance of the garage. The night air felt cooler now, carrying the soft smell of distant streets and sleeping trees. He placed a small bowl of fresh water and some food near the workshop doorway. "Tomorrow, if you come back, it will be here," he said quietly. Brownie walked toward the bowl and sniffed it once. Then sat beside it. Not eating immediately. Not rushing. Just acknowledging the kindness offered. The mechanic smiled faintly. He knew something important was happening inside his heart. This dog was no longer just a visitor. He was a companion. A silent friend who had shown that patience can save life. The mechanic glanced once more at the carrier where the kitten slept. Safe. Warm. Alive. He felt a quiet sense of completion settle inside him. Because the story beneath the car had ended not in fear, not in danger, but in understanding. The wind moved gently across the parking lot, brushing the leaves of the nearby trees. A distant car passed on the street, its headlights glowing softly in the growing darkness. Brownie lay down beside the water bowl, resting his head on his paws. The mechanic turned off the garage lights one by one. Warm yellow bulbs flickered off, leaving only the soft glow of night outside. Before leaving, he looked back once. Brownie was still there. Guarding the doorway. Watching the quiet world with patient eyes. And the mechanic felt something beautiful and deep inside his chest. Because sometimes heroes are not those who fight loudly. Sometimes heroes are those who listen when the world is too quiet to hear. The night wrapped gently around the garage. The dog remained. The kitten slept safely. And the memory of patience, kindness, and silent love stayed alive inside the golden heart of the story. Because love does not always speak. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it listens. And sometimes, it saves a life without ever making a sound.